A stunning new poll shows Donald Trump tied with Joe Biden in the blue state of New Hampshire. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video, and today it is time to talk about the 2024 presidential election because everyone, a brand new poll was released out of the state of New Hampshire just yesterday, and you would think, alright, with it being a Democrat state, you would think Biden would have a pretty significant lead over Donald Trump. That's what most people would think. Nope, that's not what's happening according to this poll. Now, I understand that it's one poll, it's early, things could change, I understand that. But this poll has Trump beating Biden. Granted, it's by a very small margin. It could go either way. But the point is, Trump is doing way better in New Hampshire than he did back in 2020 when he lost it by 8 points. Yeah, he's either tied or just slightly ahead of Biden in the state. Now, before I continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Again, folks, all support is greatly appreciated, and yeah. Now, let us get into it. Democrats have all but owned the Granite State's 4 electoral college votes, winning 7 of the past 8 presidential contests, including Joe Biden's 8-point victory over President Donald Trump in 2020. So yeah, New Hampshire in the past couple of years has become a more Democrat state. It's not the swing state it was 20 years ago. And the reason being is a bunch of people from Boston have been moving to New Hampshire, and take a guess what they're doing. They're bringing their voting habits with them. So New Hampshire, which has been a swing state for decades, is becoming more Democrat because a bunch of Democrats from Boston and other cities are moving to New Hampshire, taking their voting habits with them, and that's why everyone thought, including myself, that Trump had zero, and I mean zero, pathway to winning New Hampshire in 2024, just for that fact that a bunch of Democrats are moving there. But the latest New Hampshire Journal poll finds Biden tied with Trump in New Hampshire, putting at risk of becoming the first Democrat to lose the state since Al Gore in 2000. Yeah, it's been 24 years since, at least at the presidential level, a Republican won it. Ever since then, Republicans have been getting crushed in the state, except for 2016. Outside of that, they've been losing the state by larger and larger margins every single cycle. But this poll has Trump tied with Biden, but technically, he's up by 0.1%. So let's just say he's tied with Biden here. Even if the polling understates Biden by a couple points, let's say fine, the polling is going to be off by 2 points. Even in that scenario, this is a state that Biden won by 8 points back in 2020, or 7, I should say. That's a 5-point shift towards Trump. In one of the states that you can argue, no matter what happens in 2024, he should be doing way worse in. Because the people that are moving from Boston, from other cities in the Northeast to New Hampshire. Theoretically, he should be getting crushed here. He should lose by 15 points. But this poll has him winning, but let's just say tied, in the state of New Hampshire. The survey of 862 registered voters taken the week of May 15th through the 20th found Granite Staters evenly split between Biden and Trump at 36%, with 14% backing independent Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and another 12% choosing none of these options. And this right here is why Trump has a chance in New Hampshire, according to this poll. Not because he's doing so good here. It's because Biden is doing so badly, and Robert F. Kennedy is getting a decent chunk of the vote. He's getting 15% of the vote, or just under. In a state like New Hampshire, someone like Kennedy getting 14% of the vote is undoubtedly going to hurt the Democrats. Because, let's face it, the Republicans that are left in New Hampshire, they're voting Republican no matter what. And these new, quote-unquote, independents, they're the Democrats we're talking about, the ones that moved from Boston and other cities into the state. They claim, oh yeah, I'm an independent, but I'm going to vote for the Democrat no matter who. That's the independents in New Hampshire in a nutshell. They vote Democrat no matter what. You can look at exit polling. New Hampshire independents lean to the left compared to the country. But guess what? Someone like RFK is going to win a decent chunk of those voters. Those numbers may explain why Biden is making his second Granite State stop in 2 months, an unusual travel pattern for a Democratic president in a competitive national election. And they're right. This is very unusual for anyone, especially someone like Biden, to be campaigning in New Hampshire. Because let's do some basic math here. New Hampshire's worth 4 electoral votes. In other words, it's not a lot of votes here. This is not a state that's going to decide the election. States like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, these are the states that will actually decide the election. And even if Trump does somehow win New Hampshire, it doesn't really matter because he still needs to win Pennsylvania and Georgia. And even if Trump loses New Hampshire in that scenario, he still wins a presidency. It's very bizarre that Biden's campaign's putting this much effort into New Hampshire. This isn't, during the primary. He's doing these events in the middle of May, in a state that, mathematically speaking, doesn't really matter. Because the Electoral College, the way it is right now, it just doesn't make any sense a campaign in New Hampshire, especially with it being a Democrat-leaning state. So it makes you really wonder, is this poll kind of correct? That Biden is doing horrific in the state? It's possible. That's the only way it makes sense for him to be campaigning in New Hampshire. Biden is scheduled to appear in Nashua on Tuesday. On Monday, the Biden administration announced more than $3 million in brownfield grants to rehabilitate and revitalize communities in New Hampshire, including Nashua. This helps to put Biden's visit this week into greater context, as that sound you hear is the 2024 battleground map expanding for Donald Trump, seemingly putting New Hampshire in play this fall, said veteran New Hampshire GOP strategist Jim Merrill, who worked on the Mitt Romney and Marco Rubio presidential campaigns. Now, will I go that far and say New Hampshire is really competitive? I don't think so. Because you're talking about a state that voted for Biden by 7 points back in 2020. A state that a bunch of voters from Massachusetts, from Connecticut, Rhode Island, etc., fairly Democrat states, they're moving to New Hampshire. And they're bringing their voting habits with them. I just still have my doubts that this poll is going to be spot on. But it makes you really wonder, why is the Biden campaign putting this much effort in New Hampshire? While registered voters of both parties are largely united around their nominee, independent/undeclared voters are splitting their support in 4 statistically indistinguishable ways between Biden, Trump, Kennedy, and other unnamed candidates, Klingler said. In comparison to exit polls in the 2020 election, independent/undeclared voters in New Hampshire demonstrate significantly lower support for Biden, as Biden won around 60% of those voters in 2020, compared to around a quarter if the election were held today. Yeah, he went from winning 60% of these voters back in 2020, which should tell you everything about these independents in New Hampshire. They're not really independent. To, oh yeah, he's only at 25%. That's a huge drop-off. Biden is struggling in the polls in several states Democrats have done well in for years. The latest numbers show Biden and Trump in a close race for Minnesota, which hasn't backed the GOP presidential candidate since Richard Nixon's 1972 49 state landslide. And in Nevada, which Democrats have carried in 6 of the past 8 elections, Trump has a 6-point lead in the RCP average outside the margin of error. But a Democrat in danger of losing a state in the heart of deep blue New England would be a bad sign for the incumbent. Biden also has a Kennedy problem. The new poll shows Kennedy's support among Democrats is nearly twice as high, 11%, as among Republicans, 6.5%. Which proves what I was saying. Kennedy is winning over Democrat-leaning voters. And that's why Biden is doing this badly. RFK is taking a huge chunk of support away from Biden, more so than Trump. But at the same time, that's why I believe, at the end of the day, you're going to see Biden win the state of New Hampshire. You just will. Will it be closer than 2020? Maybe. Especially with Kennedy on the ballot. I could see that. But the problem is, these voters that are voting for Kennedy, will they support him in October and November? I don't know. Usually you see independent candidates fall off at the end. So while he might be at 15% now, he might drop down significantly to like 8%. But the problem for Biden is even at 8% of the vote, especially New Hampshire, those Kennedy voters would have leaned Democrat. So therefore, his margin of victory is going to be much smaller than it would have been. Now, it could happen, where RFK does do a lot better in New Hampshire because it is New England. This is the Northeast. This is the part of the country that I believe you will see RFK do the best in because of his last name. The Kennedy dynasty, while it's old but dead politically, there are some that still will vote for Kennedy no matter what, especially in the Northeast. So I would not be surprised if Kennedy did somehow crack 10%. But realistically, I think he gets like 8% of the vote. That should be everyone's expectations, and that's why people should realize that, all right, even in a best case scenario for Trump, he's not going to win New Hampshire. But Biden doing this much worse in the state is still not good because that's a sign that, yeah, he has a big problem. If he's doing this bad in New Hampshire, what do you think's happening in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, or even a better example, Maine? I truly believe that no matter what happens, you're going to see Maine have one of the biggest shifts to the right of any state. It's one of those states that, demographically speaking, should be voting Republican, especially for Trump. But it is the Northeast, and it will lean to the left because of it. But I think if Trump is doing a lot better in New Hampshire, you could argue he's doing a lot better in Maine because the demographics of Maine are far more friendly than those in New Hampshire. But we just got to see what happens. Either way, it is not good for Biden that he is at 36% in a state that he got over 50% of the vote in, which you could argue that's because of Kennedy, that's what it is, and the undecided voters. But you still got to assume that Kennedy does get a chunk of the vote. He's going to be on the ballot. The question is, how much is that going to impact Biden's final performance? We just got to see what happens. It is May. Things could theoretically change, but still not a good sign in a state that you won by 8 points in, that you're tied with Trump, if not barely losing. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.